in the Canada where they know the states. Just kidding. Just kidding. Morgan. It is Friday and it is another beautiful B2B Power Hour.
Good morning. Hello. Welcome to everyone joining us. Happy Friday. It is 9 a.m. Pacific. It is noon Eastern. On a Friday, that means it is time for the B2B Power Hour.
I think actually it's time for something else to start.
Oh,
What time is it, Morgan?
is it question of the day time?
Ooh, I think it is question of the
Okay.
day. I think your question of the day definitely took off last week with
Oh.
our hot dog's a sandwich. So I feel like you've set the bar high.
I don't
So
think I can reach that.
what is today's question of the day?
Hello, everyone who's joining us. If you're here, make sure to drop a hello. We'd love to see you here. We'd love to see you in our chat. And honestly, uh, the question of the day today: what's your favorite emoji to use? Like what's the emoji you're using all of the time? I want to see a chat full of emojis. Okay, I want to see all the different ones that you use. I have to fess up. I use the little sparkle one a ton. It's in my headline on LinkedIn. You know, the little
Mm,
stars. I think that if you're in Slack, the command is like sparkles or something. I don't know. It's just a very satisfying sort of star. What about you, Nick? What's the emoji you're using all the time? Oh, our audio listeners have no idea what you just did.
Desiree got it. That's that's
Uh-huh. The
that's
little
my go-to emoji. Or the other one is like the winky face one.
the winky
Actually,
face.
lately the laughing one because of there's been some good ones. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish that they had an emoji for responses on LinkedIn that allowed you to laugh because there has been some golden content that deserves like a laugh or a cry in good
Mm,
spirit.
mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. It's actually really funny. Um, I saw the other thing I've always been tempted, I want more reactions than just the ones that LinkedIn gives. Because like sometimes something's interesting, but it's not like the curious face. So then you're just like left with like,
Mediocre?
yeah,
You want like a scale of like
yeah,
for your market research, you're like, like it's good, but it's not better, and it's
right.
definitely not best. So like
Yep,
let's draw in
exactly.
the better
Yeah,
category.
exactly. All right, folks. So keep on dropping those emojis into chat. I saw Matt Parkin used my favorite emoji, the sparkles. Props to you. That's where it's at, man. So today, Nick, we're taking on a beast of a topic, something
Whew.
that has to be discussed on LinkedIn, and it's the most crucial part, I think, of any direct strategy on LinkedIn, and it's how you're doing outreach.
Yeah, and like you look at what is most companies like sales development movement. What's their go-to plan? And it's calling and emailing. But what's happened? The world has gone against calling and emailing. Now with all the different privacy filters, you don't get as much information from your cookies. A lot of spam filters don't even let you get through, and which we experience even if you are on side. And
Mhm.
with calls, a lot of people just don't pick up their phone. And if they do, like they don't have time to talk, like the world seems like it's against us when it comes to traditional sales, but that is what is taught, that's what's pushed. And so what's the option? Well, instead of training and enabling our salespeople to do good work, what do? Let's throw technology at them so they can go faster and more. So it's a
Mhm.
volume play. Well, why make if I can only make 100 calls in reality, obviously if I make 1,000, then it
Of
should work,
course,
right?
right? Right?
But something has happened in this time where we never saw it coming. Like if we would have seen the future, and me and Will Aiken talked about this on the show, if we would have seen into the future, we would have all invested more into social media, right? Everyone has social media. The one of the biggest questions we get asked, Morgan, is, "Well, my audience isn't on social media." Bullshit.
Of course they are.
Plain and simple, yes they are.
Mhm.
They may not be on LinkedIn, but somebody in that organization is on LinkedIn. Engineers, maybe they're on Reddit. It's knowing your audience, but they are always on a social media or a digital community. And why? Why, Morgan? Why has that changed the game? Why is that so important to when it comes to sales?
No one is an anonymous seller anymore.
Ooh.
No one has to be an anonymous seller, right? And so this is the mistake that we make and that we're going to talk about today, which is we think because we can see somebody's name and photo and position and all the enriched data that LinkedIn provides that they're a lead. And so we have to treat them like a lead. And so we put them into all of our volume based sequencers and all of our little checklists that we go after them. But that's not the right way to get in front of them because we are not an anonymous seller. When your name pops into somebody's email inbox, before social media, you were just a name, right? Today, they can look up your LinkedIn profile and be like, oh, who is this person? What do they actually do? So that's one thing that's going on. And the other thing that's going on is that when you're commenting, when you're posting content, when you're sending DMs, you're no longer anonymous. And so you have to be able to use LinkedIn in a way that builds trust and builds credibility because it's not just a name in an email inbox anymore. It's your reputation and it's your photo and name and company that's attached with your methods. No one is an anonymous seller anymore.
And so people realized that social is a powerful way to sell. So like anything, like the phone, like the fax, like the email, everything in history, what happens, Morgan, when something is abused and abused?
I just have a deep sigh because I got 3 of these this morning.
This is the world that we live in right now,
Mhm,
is where people don't put the effort in. They don't do the research beforehand. They don't actually utilize the technology, the tools, and the information that we never had before. I would have killed to have this when I was a road warrior, hitting the car and running my routes. We have access to all this information, but we default to the pitch slap, the me, 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 me.
mhm,
And I know a lot of sellers, like we get taught, like what we sell is valuable, so they should want it,
mhm,
but only if they know there's a problem. And so we get this excessive selling, and it goes back to, remember, Morgan, about the story about my cousin in the family
mhm,
reunion.
mhm.
I would avoid my cousin like the plague. Avoid my cousin like the plague, because every time she texted me, every time she messaged me, called me, however she got in contact with me, she wanted something, or she was trying to sell me something because she was always selling the next latest greatest thing. If that's how we are representing ourselves on social media, it is the fastest way to fall
Mhm.
and burn your reputation in the market. And so it's really hurting social right now, because our plays of relationship building that used to just crush it 6 months ago do not work, because people are expecting you to pitch slap them. They're expecting you to hit them with this pitch that's completely irrelevant and all about you.
And I sent out, we send out weekly field notes. And the field notes from last week was an experiment that we did that demonstrated this, where I sent out, I think it was about 30 connection requests, huge acceptance rates. I think I was at like 90% plus, like most people accepted. Uh, and so I did a follow up conversation opener, which 6 months ago worked so well. It was a passive opener. Thanks for connecting. How have you been? And today it's the red flag. It's a little ding 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 ding. He's going to pitch me on something. And that's because our strategies, the strategies you need to use as a seller on LinkedIn, have to evolve as the competitive landscape evolves. So the more people do the fake rapport building questions, the less you should use them. The more people do automated sequences, the less you should use them. The more that you're able to step outside of what everybody else is doing, because there's tech platforms that enable them to do it, the more successful you will be using this platform.
Can I show you? I want to show you something, guys.
Michelle's
It,
comment.
this is a really great example of prospecting done wrong. A
So
traditional way that somebody did the very basic static prospecting, like I posted on today.
mhm.
Someone asked me if I want to turn my incredible genius and become a published author, even though I'm already an international best-selling author and it says so on my profile. Screams lazy.
Yeah.
Why would you So in sales, we we're change we're oh my god, management consultants that specialize in change management. We inspire change, we influence change. We help companies do transformative change when we sell at the highest levels. Who the hell would trust you to do that level of quality work if that's what you represent? And so I think it's really, really, really important to define what social selling is.
Hmm.
And Morgan, do you want to explain the teeter totter, and then we'll
Sure.
we'll talk about where we're going to focus today, and we're going to dive in. So if you guys have any questions, start putting them in there, and we will answer them as we go.
Yep. So the way that we talk about social selling here, for those of you who are new or haven't joined a live show before, hello, welcome, is social selling is a blend of indirect and direct. And if you think of like a teeter totter, like a little seesaw that goes back and forth, you want an equal amount of indirect and direct. Because if you go too far on the indirect side and you invest in your content and your comment and your brand, sort of these indirect strategies, you become a demand generation marketer or a content marketer, right? And then if you invest too much on direct and you don't do enough on the indirect side, you're just a salesperson out on social. And so social selling is a blend between the indirect, the content, the comments, the warm-ups, etc., and the direct being outreach and DMs and prospecting. And so it's important to maintain a balance between your indirect methods and direct methods. And today we're going to talk about that. That's this side of the seesaw, the direct side of that seesaw.
Absolutely. So when we look at social selling, it is a balance. But today, we're not going to talk about the balance. We're just going to really dive in on direct outreach.
Mhm.
So if what is the one thing you want to get better at in direct outreach? Is it profiles? Is it what questions asked go and inspire a conversation? One of my favorite teaser questions that I ask myself is, how can I get them to ask me for a meeting in 90 days or less?
Mm.
But
Mhm.
what are some of your questions that will make you a better seller? What is that one thing that's getting in your way on LinkedIn, standing out from the crowd and getting meetings and writing good business?
Perfect. Drop them in. We will get to them. We are going to answer a lot of stuff on today's workshop.
Okay.
So, Nick, where do you want to start? What's the framework that you're thinking about direct outreach on LinkedIn?
I think it's important to talk about static versus dynamic prospecting.
Yes, that's a great thing. Let's start there.
So, static is old world. Static is where it was demographics, firmographics. So, it's like, where are you in the world? How many people work at your company? How much revenue? Um, what industry are you in? Like very blanket statements that do a nice like broad stroke. Now, why this isn't effective is think about if we're playing darts and I say hit green and the whole room is green. The dartboard is varying different colors of green. And I say just hit green, but the bullseye is a very specific color of green. This is what we're talking about. Is yes, the whole wall is green and you could hit it and you would do what I said. And this is what most companies do. That's static prospecting. Is you're just did it work? Did it work?
Who knows?
And moving to dynamic is dialing in that ring and focusing. So you're actually getting better with each prospecting attempt. And you're
Mhm.
dynamically finding the triggers that really answer why change? Why now? And so this you got to look for events. This is where the dynamics come in. It's not something that's just on a list and an item.
And
It's
events, not as in this event, but events as in like things that are happening, like a trigger event, funding rounds, or an example, but by no means the limit of that.
yeah, the most common two are funding rounds and promotions, which goes back to they've been used and abused.
They're
You
so
have
abused.
money, give it to me. You got
Yeah.
a promotion, buy me.
Spend your money on me. Yeah.
And so we got to really go and break it down into like what are signs and symptoms that there's a problem, but they don't know it yet. What did who said it about falling in the ditch?
Jordan Crawford, friend of the show.
Hmm. Jordan Crawford. Make sure you follow him. Go check out his stuff. He's really dialed this into a science.
But his analogy that Nick just mentioned is that if I call it the Princess Leia Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, right? You're my only hope. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. But basically, if your outreach is so dialed in and you know these triggers, you're using dynamic prospecting instead of static prospecting, you can create outreach messaging inside your outreach that essentially sounds like, I'm going to help you avoid the ditch. And the reason I know there's a ditch is because I've worked with other companies like yours, or our firm has worked with other companies like yours. And then you have the descriptors. And we know when they do X, the trigger, they often run into this problem. Interested in a conversation? That by no means is that the actual template, but that's the sort of central thrust of it. And it changes the conversation from buy my stuff because you have money to I'm here to help you avoid the ditch that you yourself may not see.
I know something from doing this specific work time and time again that will, I know this is coming up and I
Hmm.
wanted to go and let you know. This is my observation. This is the format. I'm like, this is my observation. This is why it's a problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it's basically just saying, like, interested in learning more. Because I know somebody had mentioned in the chat, Desiree had mentioned it about where do you draw the line between persistent and just flat out annoying?
Mm-hmm.
The difference is intent. Most people sell the meeting when they haven't even sold the problem. The greatest thing in sales that you can ever do is find a problem worth solving.
Yeah.
And this is where most salespeople fail. It's because we go to the solution. You look at our solution, we're like, this is freaking great. Let's sell it to everyone. But we don't break down the signs and symptoms of the problem. A great place to find this is case studies. Go on your case studies. Look at what they said they were experiencing before. And actually, I figured out a good hack for this. And I didn't even tell you this, Morgan.
Oh, okay.
Go
I'm
to your
ready.
competitor's website.
Mm.
Look at the hierarchy or the look at
Hmm.
how they organize their information of like key things that people want. What is the opposite of that? How can you find it? Hey, you're not using Sales Nav and Google Alerts to go and get this automatically? What would you be doing instead? What would you write in your profile? Oh, you go and create your own account list? I should probably talk to you. So these are some of the things that really makes it dynamic because as my joke was in my post today is it's prospecting just in the nick of time.
Just in the just
Oh
in the
god. You took it too
nick
far.
of time.
But
It's a good joke. Come on.
this is where the dynamics come in because people actually want to talk to you because there's context.
Yes.
Has anybody ever had a child ask them a question or a friend or someone and you're like, "Why are you asking me this?" Because there's no context. There's no relevance. So you're just it's kind of out of the blue. When we observe something in public, not private knowledge, not insider knowledge, something out in public, we can go and just use that. That's one of my favorite things that Jordan Crawford said. Just tell them how you found them.
Hmm.
How do they rank? What trigger did you go and find them by? Hey, I saw that you guys just lost 10 SDRs in 1 month and you haven't lost anybody in the past year. A lot of the time, this is because of training and enablement. Your people don't feel supported. They're not hitting their targets. Therefore, they're not paying their bills.
Hmm.
Interested in learning interested in exploring options,
Hmm.
interested in talking about what we've seen work to fix this.
And that's where we all stumble because in traditional I was about to say direct outreach and I was like, well, we're talking about direct outreach today. But in traditional prospecting on outbound, when you're doing emails and calls, a lot of it, we are trained naturally to do it on a volume based level. So the largest chunk of our activity is just outreach. And the smallest chunk is qualifying them, right? So we do outreach and then we do follow-ups and sequences and then we do qualification. We say, are they actually the right fit? Because they came down from it and they're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of interested. This flips it on its head. And as it happens today, Murphy's Law is seriously in play in my life. So I will be back. Have fun with Nick. I apologize. I'm gonna let Nick take it from here.
Okay, bye, buddy. Okay, get just me and my hidey hole. So when we talk about prospecting and we're going down this route, a lot of people when we go and we just do initial outreach, nurture. What are we nurturing? What are we doing for outreach? So when I do my initial outreach on LinkedIn, what is the point? And think about this in your sales cycle when it comes to making a decision, the change management. We have to answer ourselves, why change, why now, why you? Which is the 3 steps. And when we take these 3 steps, this is how we create that lasting change. So, when you do your initial outreach, what you're qualifying, because you should always be doing discovery and you should always be qualifying, is why change? And so the first thing you got to do is sell the problem. Because if they don't see the problem, if they're not interested in the problem, cut your losses, move on. Don't burn the relationship. Keep that door open. But what you can do is you can circle back later with another problem. Because usually every company only has 2 or 3 core problems that they solve better than anyone else. The danger of these 2 to 3 things is most of them sound identical to your competitors. And so when you nail the problem and you're doing your outreach and this is your observation, this is why it's a problem, that's that problem, right? When you're saying all the same things, how do you start talking about a possible solution that nobody else offers if the problems are identical?
Mm. Mhm.
And this is how when they joke about like the best salespeople can sell ice to an Eskimo, it's because they found a problem worth solving.
Yeah.
They found a purpose. And so think about your sales, your outreach. How are you standing out? Are you sending a video first? Are you sending an audio? Why are those better mediums than just sending text? Are you tracking your results? And I think this is something that's super critical when we're looking at cold calling, emailing, and social is actually tracking the effectiveness of per channel, per persona, per problem.
Mhm.
So in LinkedIn, for example, this is what we see in campaigns is that you get 100 connection requests a week. Do not push this. You will go to LinkedIn jail and it's not fun. They are very strict on this.
Mhm.
Of those 100, what is your acceptance rate? If it is below 30%, stop here and do not go past go. You got problems in the process. Your profile, content, something is wrong because it all supports you as a likable and credible source and it kills your momentum using LinkedIn or any social media as a channel to get in touch with customers if they don't even want to connect with you. They don't see value in it. They don't see a purpose. You got to do at least, 10 to 50 to see this trend. Don't just do one and be like, oh, they didn't connect with me. I got to go change my profile. Like Morgan with our website. No, just kidding.
Yeah, hey, what?
So what you got to do is if you're below 30, you're in the red zone. You got to fix it. When you're 30 to 50, you're in the yellow. You're getting better. And now it's probably you're looking at, okay, should I go bottom up? Should I go top down? Do I have the right person? Sales, right conversation with the right person at the right time. So now it's going and looking at those. So of those people I connected with, how many are turning into conversations? From those conversations, how many are turning into meetings? From meetings, how many are turning into sales? But we have to do this with every single channel to score our channels as a seller to know where the best impact is. What I find with the people that we train is you find your superpower in the first month. Some people are just gifted on the phone. Not
It's
not
true.
me, but some people are just gifted on the phone. Some people are gifted on LinkedIn and they can get anybody a meeting with anyone or at least start the process and then maybe they'll call them later because they realize that the process of stacking them together, it works better and it gets the meeting. when it comes to direct outreach, it's not singular, it's layered. And how much is has to be based on intent. How strong is the trigger? If I say I'm hungry, or if I have a scratch and I say it hurts versus I break my arm, severity of the problem determines how important it is to me.
Yeah.
It also determines what happened in my past, how severe it is compared to other things that have happened. This is why C-suite is so freaking hard to prospect, because when you talk about things are going wrong, they're like, "Did you see the '90s and the 2000s and like the late,
Mhm.
2010s when we had the recession? This is nothing."
Mhm.
Like interest rates are great because they've seen worse. So they don't see it as big as bad. So you got to find that problem that's severe enough, and that's where that observation really dives in. And
The
then you also, I want to say too, like
yep.
make it on your goals. Reverse engineer from your quota, score your channels, layer them. I'm going to go through the comments too while you're.
I saw Blake and Jay both ask, "Is this recorded?" Absolutely. Here on LinkedIn or on YouTube, you can look for the B2B Power Hour. It's live there as well and recorded there to listen again at your earliest convenience, of course. Um, the the analogy that Nick has used previously, which I have always found helpful, is in selling the problem instead of the meeting on direct outreach, which seems to be very popular in the comments today. Uh, you are attempting to become the doctor
Hmm.
because if you visit a doctor and you say, I got this little like skin thing, or like, I'm not feeling too well, like my stomach's kind of churning, but it wasn't anything to do with food, the doctor knows, or the doctor can diagnose. So here's the little trick. It's almost like a magician's trick. You have to be able to know what the signs and symptoms are at companies that are right fit, that aren't just hitting the basic, static prospecting list, are triggered based on your dynamic prospecting, but are like really good targets, the right timing in many ways that Nick talks about. And that means they may not understand it's a problem yet, but you do. And so this is a little hat trick. It's, oh, I've seen this before. Oh, yeah, we worked with another Series B company like yours that was struggling with this, this, and this. Does that sound right? We worked with this large mid-market company, and when they hired on their new director of internal communications, they ran into these problems. Is that something you're experiencing? And so you're starting to articulate, you have insight into their problems that they themselves may not have.
And
And you're being that doctor diagnosing.
if you listen to Morgan talk, he doesn't tell people what is going wrong.
Mhm.
If you tell people what's going wrong, you're selling. You're making an assumption. We all know what that means. You don't want to assume, you want to ask.
Mhm.
So the way you come across as salesy is if you're just solution focused.
All solution focused.
It's all solution focused and it's all about you.
Mhm. I
Make it
got a
about
pitch like that.
them. Make it all
Mhm.
about them. Ask questions to see if it's in their best interest to keep the conversation going. So if you don't want to be salesy, be like, what is that from that why people buy? What are those 3 to 5 questions that you need to ask before you book a meeting
Mhm.
to make sure that product, solution, service is the best fit for them to see real value? Because implementation can suck.
Of
So
course.
if you're not sure, talk to CS. Go and ask them who are the best people. Ask them for emails. Ask them for specifics on the things that really make or break them seeing value. If you can get access to it, look at who churn in the first year. Look at who are the ones that you land and then they expand and they buy more without you even having to sell them. Go talk to the champions, those power users that you already have. What is different about them? How are they using it? Figure out the problems. The problem isn't that you want to increase revenue. That's That's lazy. Maybe the problem is I don't have time to do proper prospecting to build a list every single day. Huh. Well, what if that how do you think how do you think it would change the way you prospect if that list auto-populated? Oh, that would be cool. What if it auto-populated with people that actually wanted to talk to you because it you were playing doctor and well, maybe don't say that, but if you have if you're being like a detective
Hmm.
and you're only finding the signs and symptoms of a problem
Mhm.
because until they admit they have a problem, there's no problem in their mind.
Can we take a step back for just one moment? And then I see some questions in chat we should bring up and answer as they're pretty tactical.
Let's do
One
it.
thing for everyone to consider, which we started off this explanation with, is that social selling is a mixture of indirect and direct, right? And you want to keep that seesaw balanced between how much you're doing direct and how much you're doing indirect. One thing that gets very underappreciated, perhaps, is that a lot of our quote unquote selling the problem instead of selling the meeting can actually happen on your indirect program. We're not going to really cover that today. We've talked about that previously and in previous power hours, and we'll talk about it again in future power hours. But one thing to consider is you can articulate and ask questions and get to know them more in the comments without ever sending them a connection request, without ever sending them a DM. And that's quasi direct, quasi indirect, right? So, what you're able to do inside of a platform like LinkedIn is warm up the account by engaging with them indirectly so that by the time they come to you or you come to them and send a connection request or articulate a video or send an audio DM or whatever your chosen tactic is, they are warmed up in the sense of they already know who you are, they know what you might talk about, and now the conversation can flow easier instead of just on an entirely, again, if you have the seesaw entirely weighted direct, you have to do all of that work that you could do on the indirect side. And I don't want us to lose picture of that in the broad picture, even though today we're focused on the direct outreach methods.
I like it. Some people in here are talking about like their biggest takeaway is don't sell the
Mm,
meeting, sell the problem.
hmm.
So if somebody admits that they see the problem, what do
Yeah.
you think you would do next? So think about this as the change management. What is changing in their mind to get them ready to buy? Well, what's the next thing you need to go and do with them? Quantify the impact.
Hmm.
So think about having this conversation like you're consoling a friend and they're like, "Oh, my girlfriend just broke up with me." Oh, that's really hard, but no, you were just telling me that you didn't have the time to go and do the things you wanted. Yeah, 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 you're right. And like, but what's the impact of that change? What's the impact of that event? And a lot of people don't know. It's not just faster and better. It's not. But what you want to do, this is where the mad scientist comes in. It gets to be really fun because you get to go and be the calculator with your champion to quantify impact. This can be done in a DM. It does not need to happen in a meeting.
Hmm.
And this is where LinkedIn video is freaking amazing.
Hmm.
Tell them the exact calculation, throw it in the chat. Like, hey, we were talking about this problem. I just went and did a calculation. Does this sound right? Don't assume. Ask.
Hmm.
Because then what happens? If they say, no, actually, no, I think you're a little off on this number. Look, can we go with that, can we go and edit this? Hey, maybe, I don't have I just pull public information. Maybe let's jump into a meeting. Could you get this information for me and we could discuss it further? But see, I sold the problem. We are
Hmm.
quantifying the impact. And now we are solidifying a champion.
Hmm. Do you want to? It's an anonymous LinkedIn user's comment that starts with "in your opinion," and it's about a compelling headline. Could we throw this up? So I'm not entirely sure who
What
this is.
time?
It
Timestamp.
10:29:47. Um, I'm not sure
47.
who this is. Your privacy settings prevent our app seeing your name. So, but the question is, in your opinion, what makes a more compelling headline to accept a connection request? A benefit-based headline like "I solved this problem," or a descriptive one like "I am X." I've tried both with okay results, but I'd like to dial this in.
So this is like the weirdest irony ever because me and Morgan have tested this. extensively?
This is probably our most extensive test
And the answer
experiment.
is actually neither.
Yeah.
It's what is your category?
Hmm.
So you could list like a problem.
Sure.
So like prospecting without the automation. You could do something like that, but what is your category that you stand out in, that you talk about, that you're owning, that you're packaging all this great information and really helping them? Who's it for?
Hmm.
And so, give you an example, when I said helping sales teams leverage social selling to get better results, I got shit results.
Horrible results.
Horrible results. But when I say uh exploring the future of sales,
Hmm.
I actually look and I use that on purpose because why I'm exploring the future of sales is like it's almost like gap selling, where here's where we are, here's where we could be. I'm curious where they think things are going and how ready they are to get there and if they feel like they're on track. So I use it as prospecting to set the theme of how I'm reaching out. But think about that future state. Think about that theme. What do you want to be known for? What is your specific niche? And how do you say that in a way that, what do you call it, Morgan? A shadow pitch?
Yes, that's not a shadow pitch.
Uh,
So,
I was going
in
to say one person to go look at,
mhm,
guys, is Will Aiken.
Will Aitken is a great example. So, what we're articulating here is that whenever you're sending a connection request, somebody is likely to look at your profile, and if they don't, they're going to get your little headline. And so, a few mistakes that people make are they shadow pitch, meaning they don't actually have a pitch in their headline, but everything is about like the impact or the results they make, which can work if you're only again if you're only doing indirect and you're only doing the indirect side and the content side, like, yeah, maybe that headline can work for you. But as social sellers, we're doing both indirect and direct, and all of our experiments on connection requests show that a headline that's very impact focused, helping people generate more ROI, improving ROI by 45% plus, creating 280% more leads, that stuff's fine if you're a content creator, but not effective if you're trying to connect with somebody because they expect the pitch. Even if it's not a pitch, it's a shadow pitch. And so the little ding, 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 ding goes off in the back of your head. And they won't connect with you. And then you won't have the opportunity to strike up a conversation with them. The other thing is, I also had a very helping benefit focused headline for a long time and got horrible results off of it. That was not the case 6 months ago. So some of this is evolving in real time. So yeah, I mean, find the category that you're in and how you can articulate your space in that. And sometimes it's probably related to the value prop of your company. It just needs to be written in a way that doesn't sound like you're trying to pitch them or that you're going to sell them. Because anytime I connected or Nick connected with somebody and we had helping B2B sales teams crush quota with social selling, I immediately got roadblocked of like, oh, you're going to pitch me, aren't you? And I'm like, no, we're not about that here, but I understand why now.
Think about it in the form of thought leadership.
Hmm.
Thought leaders are just in the future. They're seeing where things are going to go. Where is that area of specialty, of focus that you're trying to see where it's going? Play with that for a headline. If you guys need help, shoot us a DM.
Hmm. 100%. The other thing that came into my mind is um, a little tip trick. And the thing is, all tactics should be representative of your overall strategy. Okay. So there's a lot of hacks out there, not people, but like, how to use this LinkedIn hack. And that provides marginal benefits at any point in this, in your strategy. But your strategy should be, how am I finding and doing dynamic prospecting? And then how am I doing direct outreach to them in a way that generates conversation and gets them interested to sell them again on the problem and not the meeting? And one of the things there's a lot of back and forth about I see on comment threads are blank versus personalized connection requests. And from our data, blank does so much better. Unless, and this is a very important unless, you have already had a conversation with them. So If you're using a quasi indirect direct or you're using a blend, one of the things you're going to be doing is like commenting and engaging on people's content. That's somewhat indirect, somewhat direct. So you can send, we found, a personalized connection request that continues the conversation that you were having in their comments. But otherwise, we've seen personalized connection requests just uh, underperform compared to the blanks. And I think that's somewhat to do again for the little ding, ding, ding. Oh, they're going to pitch me. Um, there are exceptions to this, but I would say the exceptions prove the rule. And they only happen like 2 to 5% of the time for a very subset of key ICP personas. So, like most of the people you're going to use, it should be blank.
So we're in the last 20 minutes here.
Yes.
And to be respectful of everybody's time, we promised direct outreach strategies. So if you can't just go send them a personalized invitation because you have an observation,
Hmm.
what do you do next? What are your other options? What do you layer into your day and time block to kick ass on LinkedIn? Well, the easiest thing to do is find the conversations that are already happening because they're seeing the signs and symptoms. So go onto Google, set Google alerts for different searches, specific questions or problems, and you can even write it so it actually searches LinkedIn too. Because why Google did that, I don't know. I'm not complaining. And
Nope.
so what you want to do is find those conversations and think of the questions people are asking. Think about the comments they're making about being annoyed, about there being there's an issue with the workflow or they're not getting promoted. What is holding them back? Find those at scale, jump into those conversations and just talk. Have a conversation. And you know what? Once you hit the rule of 3 round trips,
Three
connect with
back and
them.
forths. Yep. Hmm.
And then you can even what did Zoe say? It's conversations in public earn interactions in private.
Hmm.
So the more we do in public, the more people can see it. So we're leveraging the algorithm to do this at a scale that we couldn't do one on one. And then we go private to go and nail that meeting. Okay, they obviously they have a problem. The question is, are they interested in doing something about it? Not book a meeting. There's stages before booking the meeting, and you got to ask yourself, what would they need to know before booking a meeting? What do I need to know about them before booking a meeting so I'm not wasting both our time?
Hmm.
Do that from comment before asking for a meeting. Have a set of 3, you can even have up to 10 questions, but 3 to 5 questions that are your qualifying questions that you ask. And please God, don't do them as a checklist. Don't go, so, what is your budget for this particular
Yeah.
project? And how would you qualify your need for this?
Yeah.
And
Do you have the
do you have
authority? Yeah.
authority? Are you a decision maker? So, don't go through a list. Turn it
Mhm.
into a conversation. Hey, Morgan, it looks like the impact of this is X, and kind of what I'm seeing is, this is the difference.
Mhm.
Is that what you're seeing as well?
Mhm.
But you have questions. You go back to that. You're quantifying so that you're going direct.
And can I just say something really quick? Because then I want to talk about accounts that aren't active. One thing that it sounds or can sound disjointed here, we know from the sales teams that we interact with and the sales reps and AEs we work with, is if you are not doing dynamic prospecting and you're settling for a volume based approach on LinkedIn, this is going to be very hard to do because you have because it's just a different system. When you're doing dynamic prospecting, you're finding the accounts and the leads at those accounts that are actually in need or potentially in need of what you have to offer. And so the conversation itself is so much more interesting than just you have money, would you like to buy my stuff? So as long as you're starting with that dynamic stuff that Nick has outlined previously, you can narrow in the conversations to a subset of leads and accounts where this conversation actually happens. If you are just doing a generic volume based approach, you're going to find yourself having really, really hard time to strike up those conversations because you don't know what to talk about, because you haven't targeted them based on triggers, because you don't have an observation or something interesting for them to know. It's just, oh, here's another account. Maybe I'm supposed to sell today. And that's not going to serve you well in leveraging the direct side of the seesaw.
Now, you've found these conversations.
Hmm.
You've done your time block. You're advancing them through. Sometimes you get lost in feed and you can find yourself wasting a lot of time. So one thing that I do is I use SalesNav and I'll have my lead list built out. And what I do is I just go to the homepage, sort by leads, and I just comment through because those are the decision makers. Those are those key personas, potential champions that I'm working through. And depending on the title, will depend on what you're doing with them. You might be fact gathering so that you can advance up and go and get the decision maker, or you just want to stay relevant and you're warming them up. How long do you warm them up? Less than 60 days.
Yeah.
The name of the game is to go direct within 60 to 90 days. Watch for those opportunities. Start comments. If they just shut you down and there's nothing, recycle them. Move on. There's enough accounts and enough people that you will find someone that wants to talk to you. And so build those lead lists. Another easy one is build your lead list, go into your CRM, find the closed won and closed lost accounts. Add them in as a lead list, stay in touch with them, keep nurturing that relationship. And if they leave that company, there's a trigger to go reach out to someone.
Hmm.
If something happens in that company, there's a trigger for an upsell. There's a trigger that might mean go back and reach out to them. That's one of the layers. Close lost. Well, maybe your product roadmap changed and there was a feature they were missing, so you kept them in there. Now you have a reason to reach out because that product roadmap has changed. There's another one. Events. Please do not use this and use this because we get jerks that do this in our events.
Yes,
When
apologies
you,
if anybody is using this event to automatically reach out to you with a poor sequencer. It's a plague on this platform.
if you go to events like this with a very specific problem that they're solving, you got to think about, okay, what is going through their head that they would want to go to this event? What are they trying to solve?
Hmm.
But once you actually register for the event, you can message people without having to be connected. If you use this ethically and respectfully, this is an
Hmm.
incredible way when somebody cancels a meeting to jump in because all you have to do is register and then you get access. And you guys are already doing it too. Like you're commenting, you're bringing people in. We've seen people go and tag prospects and get them in here to go and educate and be a resource. So they're that strategic advisor in their eyes and they're earning trust and credibility through the content and they tag them. That's another thing you can do. And it kind of ties into the biggest one is also engagement on posts. But please, God, do your research. Because I had somebody that was a content guru yesterday hit me with an InMail and said that my content didn't get the reach that it deserved, but it got 4 to 5 times the reach that they have. I have more followers. And I was like, well, what can you teach me? Because everything shows me that you're not credible.
Right. And
So
that's a
do your research when they
problem.
when they engage on your post, whether they just like or and think about the different emojis. What if they use a different emoji other than just like? What could be going through their head? Why did that resonate with them? Why is that so relevant? Why is it relevant to their role? Make an educated guess based on your problems that you know you solve. Reach out in a respectful manner. There's another layer. So then this is where your content goes from indirect to being very direct. And so
Well,
add this in. You can also go on influencers' posts.
mhm.
Who commented on their posts? What at what level? Another one is so say you got a sales nav list and it's connections of. Put your competitor's top salesperson in there. Who's
See what
connecting
they're
with
doing.
them?
Hmm.
Why?
Hmm.
What titles of people are connecting with them?
Hmm.
What type of content was resonating with them? Is it because they're going direct or is it because indirectly they're getting that buzz? Reverse engineer. The thing with sales is it's built on layers. the more layers that you have, the more opportunities, the more lines you have out to catch a fish. I would much rather be trolling with 50 lines than one. But when you know the purpose of each one, you also know what you're catching. Think about right now, where you're at today and how you've time blocked, how you're capturing people to go reach out to. Why are they on that list? Do you actually have a reason to reach out other than they're just right title, right industry? How many different layers do you have? Do you have enough to hit quota? One thing to know about comments is they are unlimited. There is no limit on how many you can send per day. Content, there's not, algorithm kind of limits how much reach you have. But if you're not layering these tactics, if you're not layering these triggers, you are working too hard. And this is why you work 60, 80, 100-hour weeks, because we're spending a lot of extra time doing admin, playing in the CRM, uh, playing in sales nav when you don't have saved searches that are auto-populating.
Well, it's interesting. The last thing I want to bring up, which is a common direct outreach strategy, is our InMails. And in our experience, they're just not super effective. Now, the difference between saying they're not super effective and they can be effective is a very, very large distance. Can they be effective? Maybe, but the difference between getting a DM and getting an InMail from somebody who, in option one, behind door number one, you're sending them a DM after you've engaged in their content, or you've attended an event together, or you have an insightful observation question, or you connected with them 2 weeks ago and you follow up with the video. All of that sequencing makes a huge difference to their interest, to their trust, to your visibility, to whether they will generate a response. If you're exclusively using InMails to get in front of people, they have to be articulated and condensed in a way that is a lot like a cold email. And the percentage response rates are going to be a lot lower than using all of these strategies combined. And it's also, and again, think of the competitive landscape. You're not the only person getting an InMail or sending an InMail, right? Your prospect might get 20 InMails a day. Is that really effective for you to get in front of a VP of sales or a VP of marketing or a CTO or anybody above the power line? They probably get 30 InMails. If they just switched a job, and they just announced that they switched a job, that poor CTO is going to get 50 connection requests from salespeople just like yourself that says basically, I saw you changed jobs. You now have money to spend. You should spend it on me. And if you take an alternative approach and you engage in their content, you build trust with them. You say, hey, I saw you attended this event the other day on LinkedIn. I took away this. What did you like about it? What did you take away? Had you ever been to an event like that before? Or have some other pre-populated question to get a conversation started? They're going to see you differently than every other seller out here. And that was the one little riff I also wanted to bring up, because we talked about strategies of like commenting. So foundation being you have your dynamic prospecting stack all set up, but you have your sales nav lead lists. You're looking at closed won and closed loss accounts. You have events. You have engagement on posts. You have comments on influencer strategies, and finding your ICP persona in influencers instead of their own content. The riff on the events thing is you can actually do if you register for it. And I would highly recommend you attending the event, and not just as a prospecting strategy. Is it leverage 5 to 10 people. It doesn't have to be crazy, but leverage 5 to 10 people after the fact instead of before. Instead of having to guess why did you come to this event, which is great if you can articulate a reason. Articulate something after the fact. Reach out to them. Say, hey, we both attended this event. I was starstruck by this. Or did you ever, you know that one speaker that said this? Did you ever hear that before? Think of the ways to create casual conversation off of authentic casual conversation. Desiree's authenticity always works for me comment is a great tip. We're on a social platform. LinkedIn's social. People don't come here to be sold. They come here to learn and to be educated and to um, and to be inspired. So use those context factors to build your outreach strategy.
So I just saw that Peter asked a question. I think this is a good kind of like cap in the
Mhm.
last 5 minutes. Unless you have more questions, throw them in. But when we talk about how we do outreach in mails versus DMs, comments, whatever, think of the trust level. Do you trust a cold call? Do you trust an email? What do you naturally trust more? Talk to your parents. Talk to your coworkers. What is their preferred method of communication? How do they like to get to know people? Do your research. If they never respond to InMails, you still can use InMails, but put it lower down. If they respond, they don't like picking up the phone, put it lower down.
Mhm.
But don't exclude it. Don't cut out a channel just because you don't. It's not your favorite. Like put it down lower. And so when you're going, say start with comments. It's the easiest. Then do a connection request. Then go to DMs. But if those aren't working, then go to an in-mail. Maybe one thing to go look at too, as you're going through this process, look at the titles, look at the people, manually prospect a few accounts, click on their profile, scroll down to activity. If there is no activity in the last 30 to 90 days, they're not going to be the best person to reach out to on LinkedIn. So, what do you do next? Something I haven't talked about before. Google them.
Yeah.
Go look at where they are social. Is it Twitter? A lot of executives still love Twitter for their news feed because it's fast and the search engine's great.
Mhm.
Are they on Reddit? Do they have a YouTube channel? Find out a little bit about them. Do some Boolean searches on Google. Half the time you can find their email just by doing that. Go work your way down from the most trusted source to the lowest. Do you know what, Morgan? Everybody always asks me about direct outreach. There's something that nobody's ever asked me before, and I found it kind of curious.
Hmm.
Would you rather, what is more trusted, Morgan? Somebody introducing me to you or me reaching out to you directly, name dropping?
Hmm. That's interesting because I used both of those this week to get in front of some
Brandon?
some yep, some big
Yeah.
folks. Yep.
Think about the level of trust inherent in your form of communication. If you're not as trusted, if you're not as credible because you're not posting and you don't have your profile dialed in, who can introduce you? At what level can you get introduced to? Maybe there's somebody lower down on the ladder that is more approachable, but they have their ear. This is the art and the science of running this process, is really understanding the different prospecting channels. So, Morgan's taking off. Bye, Morgan. Okay, just to go and wrap this up, look at the inherent level of trust in your form of communication. Prioritize the highest level. It's the same thing with prioritize the people that pick up the phone. Prioritize people that you have warm introductions to, then work your way down the ladder. It's the same thing when they say with sales, we want to prioritize deals, moving them through the pipeline. Prioritize people that know you. Prioritize the warm before you go to the cold. Have these different levels, and then you create consistency in your pipeline to build a pre-pipeline of people that are you're just ready, or you're just waiting for them to be ready for you. Set yourself up for success, and this is how you set up a pipeline and consistency over 3, 6 months to a year, depending on your sales cycles, so that you can really crush things. How do you see the LinkedIn acceptance rate? Patrick, unfortunately, LinkedIn doesn't make this easy. We actually track it in a spreadsheet. I track my calls, my emails, and my LinkedIn approaches in a spreadsheet. And I tally up every day in my daily report. And then I go and review it at the end of every week just to make sure that I have everything covered. If that's it, I want to thank everyone for all of your great questions. I really appreciate you, and I know Morgan does too, joining us every week. I'm not sure what the topic is next week. We haven't discussed it, but we have more shows that are going to be coming up. The SDR Power Up. Please go check out either of our profiles. Connect with us. I know there was a lot of new people. Check out b2bpowerhour.com if you would like to go and see past content and also exclusive stuff from the podcast. And just DM us if you have questions. It's 2022. Nobody should have to suffer in silence. If you need help, if you feel like your management's not there, if you feel like your company's not supporting you, shoot us a DM, get in our comments, and we are happy to help you out in any way we can. Thank you so much, everyone. I wish you a great rest of your day and a great weekend.